I want to be a Starship Ranger. Oh, whoop. How long have you, been there? Oh, we're doing a video! Oh, okay. No, I don't have to reschedule. I just, this is embarrassing. I don't have a topic. Do you have anything you want to talk about? I mean, I can check. Is that a topic? It's not a topic. Yeah. Sorry. Oh, I know. We can consult the list of flashcards of everything that matters and some things that don't. That's a good idea, right? Let's look. Kurt Vonnegut? No. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern? No. Godot? No. Captain Malcolm Mal Reynolds? Yes, but no. Oh, here's one. Boris Yeltsin. Let's see what I wrote here. He lived to gain and lose the love of a nation. And it killed him. So let's start at the beginning. Boris Yeltsin was born in 1931 in the Russian village of Butka. He said but. You don't know where Butka is? Well, to clear things up a bit, it's in the Tautsky district of Sverdlovsk Oblast. So that should give you a pretty good idea. That's unpronounceably hard Russian speak for saying a small village in the Asian part of Russia. In the Stalinist years of the Soviet Union, his father, Nikolai Yeltsin, was what you would call a kulak. Now, in the Soviet Union, basically they had some farmers who were slightly wealthier than a lot of other farmers at the point when communist integration happened. Now, these farmers were seen as tight-fisted and oppressors of the proletariat, so they were seen as enemies of the state. His father, Nikolai, was one of them, not wealthy by anyone's standards, but slightly better off than the rest of the common farmers. And as such, he was sentenced to 3 years in a gulag. So very briefly, in case you don't know what a gulag is, when Stalin was premier of the Soviet Union, he made these things called gulags, which were essentially concentration camps where he would send enemies of the party to be reformed through labor. I'm doing a lot of air quotes in this explanation. Basically, he would send them there, they would do labor, and then they would be released after a set period of time. Lots of people would die, but they were not death camps like the Nazis had, so make that distinction. So the years pass, and Boris Yeltsin starts looking considerably less like a baby and more like a young rising star of the Communist Party, which he absolutely was. He started out from a very simple background, winning some local elections, and then went on to become chairman of the Communist Party in Moscow, and from there went on to become chairman of the Communist Party in all of the sub-state of Russia. Whoa! So another quick explanation, the Soviet Union and Russia at the time were not the same thing. The Soviet Union was sort of a superstate that consisted of several sub-states, Russia obviously being the largest and most important of those. However, there were other communist countries in Eastern Europe and Asia that all came under the federal banner of the Soviet Union. However, some power was left in the hands of the communist governments within those specific sub-nations, so Boris Yeltsin became in charge of the Communist Party within Russia, while most of the federal power was in the hands of the Soviet Union under Gorbachev. Okay, back to the story. So what platform did Boris Yeltsin use to acquire all of this power and prestige? You say surely it must have been democratic liberalization and free market capitalism, the ideals he would come to embody in Russia. No, it was actually greater autonomy for the sub-government of Russia and no changes whatsoever economically. What? So as the head of the Russian sub-state, Yeltsin is enormously popular. However, as he goes on, his relationship with Gorbachev and the Soviet Union is not so good. Jump ahead to August 1991. Communist hardliners within the military have decided to stage a coup d'etat against Gorbachev because they think he's getting a little too cozy with the West. So they take Gorbachev hostage, they point tanks at the White House, which is the Russian parliament building, not the White House in the United States. They point tanks at it and they say, "The government is ours." Also, why is our accent French? That does not make sense. We are Russian. Anyway, they point tanks at the White House and then the people are like, yeah, that's not going to happen. So they stage massive protests and the military is finally forced to back down. At which point, Yeltsin climbs on top of a tank and gives a speech to the people where he's like, I don't speak Russian, blah, 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 for Russia! And the people are just like, they love him. So the coup does fail and Gorbachev is put back in power. However, at this point, the Soviet Union is crumbling. It's crumbling economically, it's crumbling politically, it's crumbling socially, nothing is working, and it's falling apart. And then one day, it just ends. Sub-state after sub-state votes to leave the Soviet Union, and once the world's greatest superpower doesn't exist, giving rise to the new Russian Federation. And who do they elect as their first president? Boris Yeltsin. Yeltsin, man of the people, man of the future, the man that ended the Soviet Union, the man that is going to westernize and modernize all of Russia and make their future brighter. Unfortunately, Yeltsin was much more of a destroyer than a creator. I mean, don't get me wrong, he did a lot of great things for Russia. I mean, he established democratic ideals, elected representatives, all of that good jazz. But he really failed economically. He tried this thing called shock therapy, where he would very quickly transition from a completely communist state to a Western capitalist type state. And shocking it was, because their inflation went up 2,000%. I wish I could say the economy was his only shortcoming. He started a costly and brutal war in Chechnya. When his parliament demanded that he form a new constitution, he ordered tanks to shell the White House. He fired on his own parliament. The man that had stood up against military oppression, given a speech from the back of a tank, was now shelling his own democratic ideals. And in his run for a second term of office, the man that the people had once loved so unanimously lost to the Communist Party candidate and rigged the elections so that he could stay in power. In Yeltsin's second term of office, his health started to fail. He became depressed. He became an alcoholic to quiet the pain. And Yeltsin became known internationally for his drunkenness, and the best hope of Russia became the laughingstock of the world. In 1999, Boris Yeltsin resigned, handing over power to his chosen successor, Vladimir Putin, and quietly left political life until he died 8 years later. Boris Yeltsin once said, "A man should live like a great brilliant flame, and burn as brightly as he can. In the end, he burns out. But this is far better than being a mean little flame." Boris Yeltsin burned bright. I'll see y'all next time.